Good evening and welcome to the October 19th, 2022 meeting of the Lower Merion Board of Commissioners. Before we start, please silence your cell phones. There's equipment for the hearing impaired that's available if needed. And please speak directly into the microphones at the time if you want to address the board. So in order to conduct tonight's business efficiently, we're going to begin with the board meeting. Once we've taken care of everything in the board meeting, up to and including the ordinance adoption, then we're going to stop the Board of Commissioners meeting, turn to a committee meeting, the Building and Planning Committee meeting, and once we've done that, we will start our Board of Commissioners meeting again and finish the building and planning business, which is just basically a bunch of arcane administrative stuff that only matters to the people on this dais, and to the rest of you guys, it's just going to look like a long Board of Commissioners meeting. So with that, let's call the order with the October 19th, 2022 meeting of the Board of Commissioners of the Township of Lower Merion. Please come to order and all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Bernheim.
Present.
Mr. Churchill.
Here.
Mr. Courtney.
Here.
Mr. Gabbard.
Present.
Mr. Grimes.
Here.
Ms. S. Kramer. She is here. Ms. G. Kramer.
Here.
Mr. McComb.
Here.
Mr. McKeon.
Here.
Ms. O'Neill.
Present.
Mr. Stevenson.
Present.
Mr. Whalen.
Here.
Mr. Zello.
Here.
Mr. Sinai.
Here.
Mr. President, we have a quorum.
Hey, thank you, Madam Secretary. So the next item on our agenda, or really the first item tonight, is a proclamation to designate Tregarron Road and Bala as Captain Thomas E. Royds Way. And so I'm going to invite some people into the Oval. From the audience, I'm going to ask from the Eugen Fire Station, Chief Jim Hornung, President of Eugen Firehouse, Mike Leibowitz, and Deputy Chief Dave Staferi. And then if you could come to the Oval up here, I will come as well as the Ward Commissioner, who is Commissioner Gilda Kramer, and the President of our Fire Committee, the Chair of our Fire Committee, Commissioner Dan Verna. So we are here because Captain Royds gave his life in the service of the township, and we have a proclamation. The Union Fire Station was so thoughtful to bring forward for our consideration, and this board wishes to support. So the way this will work is I'm going to read the proclamation. I'll ask Commissioner Kramer to say a few words, and then I'll ask Commissioner Bernheim to say a few words. And we have a commemorative plaque. So we have a proclamation designated Tregarron Road in Bala as Captain Thomas E. Royds Way. And it reads, whereas Captain Thomas E. Royds was born on October 7th, 1972, the son of Dolores and Maurice Royds, and descendants of generations of volunteer firefighters raised in Belmont Hills and serving the Lower Merion community. And whereas Captain Thomas E. Royds started his firefighting career when he was a teenager as a volunteer at Belmont Hills Fire Company, moving on to serve for many years as a volunteer with the Eugen Fire Association of Lower Merion, and eventually with the Clifton Heights Fire Company, where he served as a captain. And whereas Captain Thomas E. Royds, embracing his love of firefighting and his commitment of service to the community, became a career firefighter with the Eugen Fire Association of Lower Merion in 2019, attaining the rank of lieutenant in 2021. And whereas on July 24th, 2021, while responding with the Belmont Hills Fire Company to a vehicle accident on I-76, the Schuylkill Expressway, Captain Thomas Royds tragically lost his life when he was struck by a vehicle. And whereas during that incident, which cost him his life, Captain Thomas Royds heroically saved the lives of two fellow firefighters by pushing them to safety before being struck down, and posthumously earned the rank of captain with the Eugen Fire Association of Lower Merion. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Commissioners of the Township of Lower Merion finds it fitting and proper to honor Captain Thomas E. Royds, and do hereby proclaim that Tregarron Road in Bala be named Captain Thomas E. Royds Way in his honor, so that his service and sacrifice are permanently memorialized. Thank you. And to ask Commissioner Kramer.
Thank you. Captain Thomas Royds, affectionately known as Roydsy by his colleagues, was a true hero. He served this community selflessly for 30 years and was struck down tragically after saving two young firefighters who he mentored and protected. For many, many years in this community, children in this community have idolized Captain Royds and other firefighters at Union Fire, including my own children, and for good reason, because he really was a hero. His death really was absolutely tragic and senseless, and it's very little consolation that the woman who struck him, who was so reckless, has pled guilty to murder. That does little to, it's little consolation for his friends and family and colleagues and for members of our community here in the township. And I just wanted to say that this is really the least that we can do to name the little street in my ward that's right next to the Union Fire Association in his honor, so that will always remember him and remember his service and his sacrifice for our community.
Thank you, Commissioner Kramer. Now, Commissioner Bernheim.
Thank you very much, President Sinai. I don't think there's a person in this room that wishes that we were not doing this. And it is, the term tragic does not do service to what's before us. But the fact of the matter is, I've learned something in serving as the chair of our fire committee for about the past decade, that the example that was so unfortunately, set forth in the loss of Officer Royds' life is that something that each and every firefighter that we have in the Lower Merion Fire Department faces every time that alarm goes off and they get up, be it at 2 in the morning, knowing the chances are it may be a false alarm, or leave their job at 2 in the afternoon, that they are putting themselves potentially in harm's way. And they do it without hesitation. And it is so unique to have a group of individuals, both the career firefighters and the volunteers who are the backbone of our service, who do this without any hesitation, day in and day out, 24/7. So when standing here to say something in recognition of somebody who gave the ultimate, I really struggled to find the words. But I had the privilege of serving with each of the fire chiefs and some members of each of the fire companies during the past summer, where we set forth a strategic plan for the fire company. And one of the things that we did is we tinkered with what it is the motto for the fire company. And the truth is, and President Sinai can verify this, it was only 5 minutes ago he said to me that I'd be saying something. I carry this with me, because it reminds me of who it is that I have the pleasure of serving on the fire committee. And the mission statement reads, the mission of the Lower Merion Township Fire Department, along with the support of other public service agencies, is to provide the community with the highest level of fire protection services to minimize life and property loss through suppression, code enforcement, fire prevention, and education. This mission will be accomplished by its volunteer and career firefighting force, safely utilizing the latest technology and modern equipment with duty, honor, and sacrifice. And tonight we honor that ultimate sacrifice for somebody, and we are so sorry that we have to do it, but we thank you all very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Bernheim. And to give you this proclamation, and again, thank you very much. We are grateful for you, and we are grateful for your service, and we are grateful for the service of the entire fire department, Lower Merion. Thank you. second.
On behalf of the Union Bar Association, I want to thank you for your support. Special thanks to Jody for the writ on the proclamation, and to all the commissioners. And thanks to the support of my fellow firefighters coming tonight.
Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is recognize the service of some advisory board members. And so we are going to ask Joe Rudick, Tony Vale, and Eileen Wasserman to join us in the oval. We're going to stand here and just kind of face this way. Is that better? Okay, we can face them. and Vice President Gavin has a gift. So this is a more pleasant thing to be able to do tonight, and that is we have a number of people who in this township provide great service for our township by serving on our advisory boards and commissions. And every once in a while, some of them sadly rotate off, and we have the opportunity to thank them for their service, which is what we're going to do tonight. I'm going to introduce each of them, and Vice President Gavin has a gift and memento for you. So we'll start with Joe Rudick. Joe was on the Environmental Advisory Council from 2014 till 2021 and served as the chair. And is a committee in this township that provides a tremendous function in terms of guiding the board in the sustainability and environmental initiatives that we take. Thank you very much. Tony Vale is on the Planning Commission from 2007 till 2018, now serves on the Zoning Hearing Board, which is a lot of building and planning for any one person. And we are deeply grateful for you to serve in that function on behalf of the township. Thank you very much. And the remaining person is Eileen Wasserman, who's on the Human Relations Commission from 2011 till 2020, and also serves as chair. This commission deals with, I don't know how to describe it. So human relations matters, but there are issues having to do with inclusion. Thank you for the words. That come up. Okay, you know what, I'm going to just give this to you next. Thank you very much for doing it. We are very grateful for your service as well. Okay. I have a microphone. I'm going to start with Joe. I'll put you on the spot, but if you want to say anything, you're welcome to.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. It's an honor to serve on the EAC. I get a real feeling of what it takes to keep sustainability going and how hard the board works to make that happen in Lower Merion. Thank you.
I'll just say that my many years on the Planning Commission and now on the Zoning Hearing Board have really been not work but a great pleasure. I have terrific colleagues, and the staff of the township's outstanding. So if we have our doubts about government in other places, we shouldn't have any doubt about the quality of government in Lower Merion.
Thank you, Joe. Tony just re-upped for another decade, just right now.
Thank you, Todd. I would also like to say that it was an honor to serve on the Human Relations Commission. The Lower Merion Human Relations Commission, as you probably all know, was one of the first human relations commissions in the state of Pennsylvania, and as such really paved the way for the creation and the forming of other human relations commissions in other townships. And the importance of that is that in the non-discrimination laws, they did not cover LGBTQ. And so in forging that path, we created protections for the population and also created an agreement with the state so that we were also protecting all forms of discrimination. And the commission continues to be a leader in the Tri-States Human Relations Commission, which we were part of creating, and I continue to serve on. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all three of you. Okay, so I will now move for the approval of the minutes of the stated meetings of the Board of Commissioners held on August 1st, 2022, and September 21, 2022, and a special meeting of the Board of Commissioners held on September 7th, 2022, as distributed. Thank you, Vice President Gavrin. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Madam Secretary, that passes unanimously. Some announcements. The board met in executive session on October 12th and again earlier this evening to receive reports from its professional staff regarding ward maps, personnel matters, legal matters, the Lower Merion School District, and coronavirus. Montgomery County will be hosting a sponsoring a household hazardous waste collection on Sunday, October 23rd at the Township's Public Works Complex. You do need to pre-register, and information about the event can be found on the Township's website calendar. And pre-registration's on the website, right?
Through the website.
Yep, okay. This is the point in the evening where we have public privilege of the floor, which is where members of the public may address the board on any non-agenda items or any other public matters in which the township has jurisdiction or authority. Those of you who are familiar with the rules know that we ask you to keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. And if a group is someone speaking on behalf of a group, we will ask you to speak for 5 minutes or less. We already have an attendee approaching the podium. Please introduce yourself and go ahead.
Good evening, Maura Gillen, Haverford. I feel like this is as much an announcement as it is an expression of concern. I want to draw people's attention to the scheduled meeting next week on the 27th at 4 p.m. It's a joint meeting of the Historical Commission and the Historical Architecture Review Board to once again review the design guidelines for historic resources and historic districts, now more than 4 years in the making. This is where they will be reviewing the October version, which is not a whole lot different from the January version, unfortunately. It still remains far too much. It is far too dense. It is not user-friendly. It is not designed with the applicant in mind. Back in, I think it was March, when we were reviewing the January version, Phil Franks, who I believe has been on the Harb for 20 years, his comment was, for someone new to the process, this document is terribly intimidating. There are 20 pages of history of architecture in our community, most of which was lifted from the comprehensive plan. It doesn't belong in here. What's not in here is really clear guidance for an applicant on how they should approach the HC and the Harb. Back in 2019, I got the minutes from that meeting. The idea was that design guidelines belonged in the zoning code. You couldn't put this into the zoning code as an appendix. It doesn't belong there. It's not written that way. The comprehensive plan specifically called for improving the overall process for individual historic resources, actually the used properties in that instance, and historic districts by providing clearly written and illustrated design guidelines and streamlining the Harb and Historical Commission review process. This does not do that, people. Please, if you have an opportunity, read it. This is what supposedly is going to guide our historic preservation in the future, and I don't think it's going in the right direction. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for those comments. Anyone else in the room wish to make public privilege and a non-agenda items? Please come forward.
I'm Patricio Ramirez from Ardmore.
And I'm part of a group of Lower Merion residents that's been working for the past couple of years to try to get a skate park in Lower Merion. Thank you very much for the support you've given us all these 2 years and for putting the project in the capital improvement plan. In particular, thank you to Commissioners Stevenson, McKeon, Kramer, and Whalen for their active support on this, and also for actually jumping on a skateboard. I'm not sure if you've seen Commissioner McKeon or Commissioner Stevenson jumping on skateboards to share the thrill of skateboarding. As you prepare, yeah, well, we will be happy to support you with the safety measures. As you prepare to finalize the capital improvement plan, we wanted to share with you why this is so important for our community. More than 400 residents have expressed interest in getting a skate park through surveys and emails, and we're in contact with them continuously. You've met a lot of them at our events like clinics and skateboarding pop-up skate parks. Tonight, 4 of those residents representing different segments of the Lower Merion population and the different wards wanted to share their perspective on why this project is so important. We didn't want to take too much time from your evening, so it's only 4. We can bring more next time. And we're going to start with one that's over Zoom, already waiting there, and then we'll bring a couple more. It's going to be short, we're going to keep it tight, but thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room wish to take advantage of public privilege?
So we have one online.
Isabel Melvin, Wynwood, Pennsylvania.
Okay, sorry, if you could hold 1 minute, sorry.
Am I at the wrong?
No, sorry, we just have someone online, so I'm going to just ask you to wait 3 minutes.
Of course.
And because we have
Of course.
a young commenter online.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Please go ahead.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Chloe, and I am 8 years old. I live in Bala, Cameroon. I am in 3rd grade. I am a skateboarder. I hope to change your ideas of what a skateboarder is, and to show you that Lower Merion needs a skate park. You're probably looking at me and thinking, how cute, a little girl that rolls around on a skateboard. But I can skate, like really skate. You can check me out on Instagram at Bowie Skates. Skateboarders are athletes. We are determined, disciplined, strong, and brave. We fall over and over and over till we learn a trick. We are proudly covered in bruises and scrapes. All athletes need a home to practice their sport. Basketball players have basketball courts. Tennis players have tennis courts. Baseball and soccer players have fields. Why don't skateboarders have a home in Lower Merion to practice their sport? Skateboarders in Lower Merion have nowhere safe and legal to go skate. We have to travel to Philly, Lansdale, Middletown, Quakertown, Wagner, or Delco just to practice our sport. I spend a lot of time in the car trying to get to skate parks. The best feeling in the world is landing a trick you've been working on for weeks and the skate park cheers and celebrates with you. The skate community always supports each other. I want that feeling of community in Lower Merion. Skate parks are magical places that bring community together. Let us show you that magic, and please help me get a home for LM skaters. Skateboarding belongs in Lower Merion. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Thank you for your patience. Please go ahead.
Sure. I'm Isabel Melvin, Wynwood, and I'm a member of Climate Action Lower Merion. And I also forgot to thank you for representing me and the residents of this township. I know it's a really hard job. I know you're here a lot, so I appreciate it. We're worried in reference to the proposed athletic fields by Lower Merion School District at 1800 Montgomery Avenue and 1831 County Line Road, also known as Oakwell. We'd like to urge you to please heed the advice of our township's EAC especially from their memo of February 2021 that I know you all received. But I just wanted to remind you, I quote what they said in this document. The Environmental Advisory Council reviewed Lower Merion School District's preliminary plan submission for the above noted project during our regular monthly meeting on January 25th, 2021. The following issues noted below are of great concern to the Environmental Advisory Council and should concern every resident of the township. As the long-term impact of this development sets a dangerous precedent for needlessly demolishing and diminishing resources of high ecological value and environmental benefit. To call this a potential ecological emergency for the township would not be an overstatement. The Environmental Advisory Council opposes township approval of this application, end quote. I'd also like to reference a memo of April 2021 from the Federation of Civics, which represents all the civic associations throughout Lower Merion Township. As you know all this, and you've probably read all these. I'm just here to remind you because I really like what's said in these, and I know that this issue will be coming up soon. The Federation of Civics, I'm quoting, the Federation of Civics of Lower Merion and Narberth is deeply concerned about the proposal to remove over 500 mature trees on the Lower Merion School District properties at 1800 Montgomery Avenue and 1835 County Line Road. These properties are uniquely beautiful, heavily wooded, and highly environmentally valuable. Mature native trees up to 5 feet in diameter, dense forests of 80 feet and plus trees, and a protected wetland are situated on the properties. So I ask you, board members, please go to bat for us and help the Lower Merion School District realize their mistake and help them find alternative athletic fields. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Lila Greenberg. I'm 17 years old, and I live in Villanova. I'm a senior at Harridan High School, and I've been skateboarding for almost 3 years now. Skateboarding has been the best thing that's literally ever happened to me. It has led me to jobs, opportunities, outlets, and some of my closest friendships. However, all these connections were made outside of my township, outside of my home community. To practice my hobbies, to do what I love, I have to travel. On the weekends, I take the train into Philadelphia, and almost every day after school, I drive 15 minutes to Radnor to skate and train for my competitions. Skating is an amazing community. If you show up at a skate park and you're a beginner, you will be accepted. People will be there to help you. It is awesome. We're all there to do the same thing. We're all there to skate, no matter your background, your age, your skill level, your gender. We're all there to do the same exact thing. However, this amazing community is vacant in Lower Merion, and that is here why I'm speaking tonight. We don't have a place to practice or focus our hobby, and this leads us to find other places that aren't really allowed to skate. Like, we'll try and find parking lots in Lower Merion, Suburban Square, and this causes damage and kind of leads to the common misconception that skateboarders kind of rebel and we don't listen, but really we're just trying to find a safe place here to practice what we love. Creating a skate park in Lower Merion will bring this unique community to the township. Skaters will have a place to come, work together, and support each other, and just to have fun and to be ourselves. If we have this, I know so many people will use it. I work at Skate the Foundry, and when we had pop-up clinics at Lower Merion, both of the courses with the younger kids and the older kids, they were both completely filled. And also the competition after had over 50 people in it, and everyone was involved. It was a great time. So this project will impact me and all of the other skaters and people who want to learn. So I thank you for your flexibility with this and being on board, but I just want to make sure all of you know how important it is to me and my classmates and my family and my friends and people from all over who share this common interest. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else in the audience who wishes to take advantage of public privilege?
Hi, I'm Robin Greenberg. I live in Villanova, and I'm also here to discuss the skate park that I believe is in our budget. You just heard from my daughter, Lila Greenberg. I can't tell you how much this has meant to my family during COVID, when a time when kids didn't have a place to be. I had 2 kids who got to be outside on a daily basis in Radnor, not in Lower Merion where we live. But it gave them the opportunity to be kids. It gave them the opportunity to be outside, to be social, and to not to feel what they were missing from their lives when they weren't in school. And it became a hobby for them, and they became leaders from it. My daughter works in it. They film, they edit, they support one another. And in any other sport, like the girl that shared on Zoom, if you want to play tennis, you can go play tennis. If you want to play basketball, you can go play basketball. If you want to throw a ball at a field, you can throw a ball at a field, but this isn't available. And having this in our community would allow our kids to have a safe space that's appropriate for them to practice their hobby. And, you know, it's an emerging sport, and we should have it available for our children, young adults. There's 30-year-olds at the skate park to all come together and to participate. So I hope that happens. I thank all of you for serving and for your time. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thanks for all you do. My name is Alex Block, Lower Merion High School class of 1999, current Bala resident and board member for LM Skate. I'm here to show my support for building a skate park in Lower Merion. I last presented to the Board of Commissioners in 1997 to request support for a skate park. Skating for me has had an incredible impact on my life. It taught me discipline, it's connected me to my body, it's helped me build community. Skating has taught me persistence, it's taught me art. It's allowed me to have an activity that wasn't a team sport, but still gave me all of the lessons of one. It's no longer 1997, and I have many wrinkles now, but Lower Merion still doesn't have a place to skate. I'm incredibly encouraged that the park has been added to the capital improvement plan and has been prioritized as an A project. It's wonderful to see Lower Merion supporting skating in this way, and I'm beyond thrilled by the commitment. Growing up as a skater in Lower Merion was always a challenge. We were labeled as bad kids, even though all we wanted to do was be with friends and practice what we were passionate about. I now have kids of my own, and as uncoordinated as they are, I'm really looking forward to them having an alternative space for community, for friendships, and for physicality. Times have changed, and our collective imagery of skaters has also shifted. Our surrounding townships and municipalities all offer various forms of skate parks, and it's time for Lower Merion to join them. Thank you for keeping the skate park as an A project and for keeping the funding allocation as a priority for the township. Myself and all of our children, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So anyone else in the room wish to take advantage of public privilege? Going once? Okay.
Not about skateboarding, though, but I've tried it. It's absolutely terrifying. I don't know how everybody does it. I think it's pretty amazing. Anyway, back to Oakwell and trees. I'm just going to read a couple of lines and a couple of words from the EAC memo.
If you could just please introduce yourself first.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Hillary Johnston. Live in Gladwin. Anything else? I'm going to read a couple of words and lines from the EAC memo because it's been a while since y'all got it, probably. Because it's like a really impressive, definitive piece of work here. She read the little intro thing. The property is situated on a designated natural heritage area supporting landscape. Development on this environmentally valuable parcel, public speaking, merits a higher level of consideration from the township. Due to the unique cultural history of the two properties, the high ecological value associated with the existing mature tree canopy and the adjacency to both Stoneleigh and other residential properties. Oaks alone, oak trees alone, this is amazing. Many on the property that could have been present when Pennsylvania became known as Penn's Woods in the 1600s. Some of those oak trees are that old. Oak trees live, white oaks, the white oaks are the most impressive, and they can live more than 600 years. So, how old is that if it was born in 1600? Who can do arithmetic? Anyway, many of those oaks are not old trees yet. The existing mature tree canopy is probably sequestering more than 40,000 pounds per acre of carbon. It's hard to get a grasp of that, and I can't explain how you do, but considering that's 13 plus acres, that translates to upwards of 450,000 pounds of carbon. It's a lot. The EAC does not approve of the applicant substituting a columnar tree where code requires a shade tree. The applicant is not making every effort to avoid tree removal as required. Removal at the scale they propose of healthy, mature trees equates to massive deforestation. We hear about that in Brazil. At a time when global climate changes demand precisely the opposite actions in places like Lower Merion Township. Applicant's proposed plant schedule does not comply with Section 135, requiring trees that are a comparable replacement. The EAC does not approve of non-native species. The EAC does not support, what does that mean? Does not support granting a waiver that would permit Lower Merion School District to plant required compensatory trees off-site. The intent of the wooded lot code requirement is to protect existing township woodlands. The EAC requests that the applicant provide evidence that the excessive amount of land disturbance for this development will not result in a long-term loss of mycorrhizae in the soil, mushroom stuff. Due to climate changes in the larger environment, the global community has recognized an urgent need for afforestation, the opposite of deforestation.
So ma'am, I'm going to need to ask you to wrap it up because we're at the 3-minute thing.
That was that little buzzer thing?
Okay, yep.
Okay, so wrap it up. Blech. Property solely to secure the right to practice sports does not justify long-term detrimental consequences on the health of our environment and quality of life in our township. It's a really green township already. It's a great township. That's special property. There are no invasives on that property. I know a lot about invasives.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good evening. I'm Holly Manzoni, Wynwood. And first of all, I'd like to thank all of you for all the work you do. This is an evening of appreciation, and I appreciate what you do on behalf of all of the residents of Lower Merion. I think that's really great. I, too, have been fighting to save Oakwell, and I go to a lot of the school board meetings, which haven't been very successful because I think they have a special interest. They're looking out for their own good, not necessarily what's good for the entire community. One of the things I'd like to point out is that they don't need these fields. They have a brand new, beautiful school with some very wonderful playing fields outside. What they don't have there is a baseball and a softball field, and I think that's what this whole battle is about, getting this baseball and softball field. I think that there are other locations that they could probably solve that problem with, given that they have to bus the kids to, if they could go along with this plan, they would have to bus the kids there anyway, let them bus the kids somewhere else. But I think beyond that, there's the fact that only 7th and 8th graders even play baseball and softball. I believe that the teams are about 15, 16 kids. Let's call it 20. Let's give them that. There are 2 baseball and 2 softball teams for 7th and 8th graders. So we're looking at 80 kids. We're looking at tearing down all these trees and destroying this historic resource with incredible environmental significance for at most 80 kids, when there are other ways of achieving these goals. And I'm really hoping that we as a community can count on you to save this property. I understand that they can't go ahead with this plan unless it's signed off by the township and that they're applying for variances. That too troubles me, because I know that the township has spent, I believe it was 3 years and 40 public meetings to establish the ordinances that you have now. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of time and a lot of work by a lot of people to get things right for what is best for this township as a whole. And to let somebody have a variance for the benefit of at most 80 kids, I think is very shameful. So I hope we can count on you to do what's right for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room wish to take advantage of public privilege of the floor? Okay, seeing none. Jody, do we have anyone online? Anyone else online?
I do not see any virtual hands raised.
Okay. I believe we have had one comment submitted in advance. It is from Jeffrey Dobkin of Bala, and he writes about the stop signs at Bryn Mawr and Lodges Lane. And I'll just read a chunk of this. He first starts by thanking to the commissioners for the job that we are doing. Not many people realize the amount of work we do or appreciate it. Then he says, may I please call your attention to the stop signs at the corner of Bryn Mawr and Lodges Lane. Lodges Lane has 2 intersections with Bryn Mawr Avenue, about 50 feet apart. Now there are 2 stop signs, one at each intersection, 50 feet apart. What were you thinking? This is absurd. While it may seem like an easy and visible change, these signs are unwarranted, and the placement of 2 stop signs 50 feet apart is a decision of incredibly poor judgment. I remind you that there has never been an accident at this intersection or any kind of injury ever, or at least while I have lived here, and I've been resident in this neighborhood for over 50 years. And then he continues, this is available from the Township Secretary if you want a full copy, but it continues along the same lines. Does any board member wish to respond to any of the comments made during public privilege of the floor? Commissioner McCann.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank the skateboarding enthusiasts for coming out here today. I appreciate all your energy that you brought. And I wanted to mention, too, to everyone out there listening, on October 23rd, the Eagles are on a bye, so there's no Eagles game. And instead, you can come to McMorran Park in Belmont Hills, the little skate rink there that's called Smith Park. There's going to be a skateboarding clinic from 3 to 6:15. So while there isn't a large full-time skating facility, we do have this hockey rink that we can open up a little bit. So 6 to 8-year-olds are from 3 to 4 p.m., 9 to 16-year-olds from 4:15 to 5:15, and then after that it's open skate. And you can register at lmskate.com. So I appreciate all your effort in moving this thing along, and as was mentioned before, there are skateboarding requests in the budget, and I think we should make that an absolute priority to try to locate a location for it. I know we have a few, and to get it funded. So again, thank you for coming out today.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner McCann. Any other commissioners wish to respond to any comments? Commissioner Zoff.
Thank you, President Sinai. Maura Gillen is a very dedicated resident of our community, and her idea on a user-friendly historic property ownership guide sounds practical and logical to me. So I thank her for that. And there are efforts underway with the school board to find a solution to middle school fields that would limit the use of the land at Oak Grove. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Zoff. Any other commissioners wish to respond? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to public comment. This is a section of our meeting where members of the public may address the board on any agenda items. Again, please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. All comment on all agenda items except for the ordinance being considered for adoption. This is the time we will hear comments separately on that on the business tax amendment ordinance at that time. I see we have someone wishing to make public comment. Please go ahead.
Comments. This is Mara Gillen, Haverford. My comments relate to item K on your consent calendar, specifically to the first element of the list of minor edits. What had been presented as the correction of a typo in the definition of historic resource is not just a change of a word, but a significant change in meaning. The new meaning would be inconsistent with the clear and consistent definition and description of historic resources elsewhere in our municipal code, including that same section on definitions where Class 1 historic resource and Class 2 historic resource are clearly and consistently defined as building sites, structures, and objects. The sentence as it currently reads is awkward, but not inaccurate or inconsistent. Historic districts are comprised of parcels, and they have contributing and non-contributing building sites, structures, and objects. The sentence could be improved or could be simply dropped. What can't happen without a whole lot more discussion, public discussion, is a change in wording that affects a change of meaning. Maybe that change was desired, but it has not been fully considered in the context of the entire municipal code. One of the problems with dealing with historic resources is the outreach to those of us who live in historic resources or contributing resources within historic districts. So you will see me again at the budget meetings asking for just a little bit of money to actually reach out to the 900 of us who are affected and get us involved. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to make public comment? Okay, Jody, do we have anyone online?
We do not.
Okay. Do any commissioners wish to respond to any of the comments? Okay, seeing none, thanks. So we'll move on to the consent calendar. Does anyone want to remove any item from the consent calendar? Okay, so I'm going to move that we approve the consent calendar as presented. Do I have a second? Thank you, Vice President Gavin. Madam Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Burnham. Oh, sorry, I didn't realize
You
this
sit
was
down.
council. Mr. Churchill.
Yes.
Mr. Courtney.
Yes.
Mr. Gabbard.
Yes.
Mr. Grimes.
Yes.
Ms. S. Kramer. Ms. G. Kramer.
Yes.
Mr. McComb.
Yes.
Mr. McKean.
Yes.
Ms. O'Neill.
Aye.
Mr. Stevenson.
Aye.
Mr. Whalen.
Yes.
Mr. Zeller.
Aye.
Mr. Sinai.
Yes.
The consent calendar is duly adopted.
Okay, thank you. With that, we turn to the public hearing and adoption of ordinance on page 46 of your packet. And so I'm going to start by moving this. I move that we adopt an ordinance to amend the Code of the Township of Lower Merion, Chapter 138, Taxation, to provide for uniform enforcement of business registrations and penalties for failure to secure a business registration under Chapter 138, Article 2, Local Services Tax, Chapter 138, Article 3, Mercantile License Tax, and Article 4, Business Privilege Tax, to amend the filing dates in all articles for consistency, and provide for uniform enforcement of registration license provisions, to allow the collector to extend the filing deadline under specific circumstances, to allow for the imposition of civil fines under all articles, and to amend Chapter A167 fees to include fees for business registrations under Chapter 138 Taxation, Articles 2, 3, and 4, and to include penalties for failing to obtain a registration license under Chapter 138 Taxation, Articles 2, 3, and 4. This ordinance was authorized for advertisement at the stated meeting of the Board of Commissioners held September 21st, 2022, and duly advertised in the October 9th, 2022 edition of the Mainline Times and Suburban. Thank you, Vice President Gavin, for that second. I guess at this point, I'll turn to public comment on this motion. Seeing none. Jody, do you have anyone online who wishes to make public comment?
We do not.
Okay. Do any commissioners have any questions for our township manager or staff on this? Seeing none. In that case, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on this item.
For the adoption of ordinance 4252, Mr. Churchill. Did he step out too? Sorry. Mr. Courtney.
Yes.
Mr. Gabbard.
Yes.
Mr. Grimes.
Yes.
Ms. S. Kramer.
Yes.
Ms. G. Kramer.
Yes.
Mr. McComb.
Yes.
Mr. McKeon. Oh, where is
Yes,
it?
it's a yes.
Ms. O'Neill. Aye. Mr. Stevenson.
Aye.
Mr. Whalen.
Yes.
Mr. Zillo.
Aye.
Mr. Sinai.
Yes.
The ordinance is duly adopted.
Okay, thank you, Madam Secretary. So at this point, we're going to recess the Board of Commissioners meeting, and we are going to start the Building and Planning Committee meeting. And after the Building and Planning Committee meeting, we will resume the Board of Commissioners meeting, in which case we will not have to do the Pledge of Allegiance again. So at this point, I recognize the Chair of the Building and Planning Committee, Commissioner Grimes.
Thank you, President Sinai. So there is one item on the agenda. This is the continuation of the table matter of the preliminary land development plan and the developers agreement for 231 and 251 St. Asaphs Road, 123 Bala Plaza, and 333 City Avenue, 2 Bala Plaza in Bala, Kinwood. Just to lay things out for everyone about how we're going to proceed, because there are two different motions that would ultimately have to be taken up and considered, and I believe we're probably going to do that tonight. We're going to start with the preliminary plan and then move on to the developers agreement. So what I'm going to ask do in a moment, if you'd like to talk about both parts at the same time, you're welcome, or you can talk about the preliminary plan and then we'll move to the other. And then we'll take commissioner questions, comments. I presume that many of my colleagues asked questions the last time we did this 2 weeks ago, so I ask you not repeat the same questions or comments, but if you have something new, that's certainly fine. And then once we dispose of the preliminary plan, we'll move on to the developers agreement. We will also take public comments separately on the preliminary plan and the developers agreement. So Jillian, I'm going to ask you to go ahead, and I'm going to, as I'm sure you're probably going to do anyway, I'm going to ask you to focus on any changes in the preliminary plan since the last time. And just to be clear, if the applicant has anything they want to add about the changes, certainly they're going to be welcome to do that after she's finished her presentation. So thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Commissioner Grimes. So I'm going to just quickly highlight the changes since the Building and Planning Committee previously saw this proposal. There were a number of comments that were raised at the last review. So many of these changes are revisions or amendatory language to address those concerns. We have two new conditions of approval that staff is recommending. Both of them relate to the transitional park, which you can see shown on the screen right here. This is as the applicant has proposed it. Staff has recommended that the surface parking lot that's located along the land barriers extension be relocated so that those parking spaces are provided on street on that land barriers extension. We've also included a condition that allows the applicant to maintain the existing location of their basketball courts. But if that location is maintained, they have to increase the green space so that there is no longer parking between the roadway extension and the existing and expanded basketball courts. So those are the purpose of those two condition recommendations that staff has. We also discussed a number of revisions to the existing conditions that were recommended by the Planning Commission, and I'm just going to quickly go over them. Number 5 was to strengthen that condition. It was a requirement to explore some site changes. This now requires them to relocate the roadway that was bisecting the Village Square. Number 13 is aimed at ensuring that the upper story structured parking is properly designed and is appropriate as viewed by the public from the public way. Number 14 is to ensure that the architecture of the residential structure facing Belmont Avenue is appropriately designed. These are details that will be reviewed by the board and by the Planning Commission. They'll go through our planning process. Number 20 is the relocation. This is another strengthening condition. It's a relocation of the public gathering space at the intersection of Monument and Asaphs Road. And number 40 was a condition of approval that was discussed at the last meeting. I believe Commissioner Kramer had recommended this, so we've included that as some of the conditions, recommended changes. There's also a mandatory language that has been revised to address some of the concerns that were expressed at the last review. The primary change, and I know that this was included in the issues briefing, there has been some additional changes to that, and which have been distributed to you. And then this language has been added to ensure that construction would commence or be ongoing on priority improvements prior to permitting of additional residential. So there are the priority residential that's located at R1A, R1B, and then there are a number of secondary residential structures that are part of or included in Phase 1. And we've also included language that allows the developer to pursue review, so they are able to file and allow for a review to be ongoing of those secondary residential Phase 1 buildings while they have other construction ongoing on their site. So the aim of this is to reduce or eliminate a possible review delay for them. The applicant has reviewed this amended language and they find it acceptable. And again, it is located in the two-page handout that you were given. It's slightly different than what was included in the briefing. There's also been a change to the language for force majeure to address concerns that were raised at the last meeting. Sorry, Commissioner Grimes, to you.
That's the developer's agreement now, right?
Yes.
Do you
yes.
mind holding those?
Oh, yes,
until we
sure,
get past?
of course.
So, go ahead. Do you have more on this part, or are you finished?
Well, I was just going to say that the force majeure language was revised to address concerns expressed previously.
Okay. So, thank you. Just for clarity, so I think my colleagues have the two-page sheet. Unfortunately, we've had a little glitch in some of the language on condition 13. Jillian showed us the latest language, which, as you might see, is a little different than what's in the printed sheet in front of us. That is the correct language up on the screen. I'm not certain if any others are different as well. It doesn't show some of the changes,
so,
if nothing else. So,
yeah, I think this is a revision to the last revision.
Yes.
So this is a revision from the very beginning.
Right.
From what the Planning Commission recommended to what you're seeing now, this includes all of the changes.
Right.
I believe what you have in front of you is changes from last meeting to now.
Right. So just so we're clear, if anyone wants an extra half an hour to make sure they can read this language, we have nowhere else to go because the Phillies aren't doing particularly well. So, thank you. Does the applicant have anything to say on this part of the plan? If you'd like to, you're welcome.
Good evening, Commissioners. The language to the developers agreement.
Identify yourself.
Do you want to announce yourself? Hi, it's Phil Rosenzweig on behalf of the applicant.
Thank you.
Good evening. Jillian is right that the language change to the developers agreement is acceptable, but there was a single word that needed to change from what I believe she had on the screen. There is an "and" that needs to become the word "or," and if Jillian puts it back up, I can show you where that is. And
this is in the developers agreement?
It's in the developers agreement, and it's in that dense language.
Well, we're not up to the developers. You'll have another opportunity then.
Commissioner Grimes, I thought you wanted the
I'm
full
sorry.
comments.
No.
Okay.
Developers agreement will do.
And then the one other comment on the conditions of approval is we had discussed with respect to the transitional park. It is agreeable for us to move the parking and to create that additional green space. But we discussed earlier that for the, I'll call it additional green that would sit on top of the existing parking, we inquired as to whether AstroTurf would be an acceptable greening feature there, and staff said that it was okay, so we would want to add to the language And this is strictly with respect to that additional space, that AstroTurf would be an acceptable alternative. That does not mean that we might not plant it, seed it, and plant it in any event, but we just wanted to clarify that. Also, in the first condition on transitional park, the words "to be" are missing before, and the balance of the spaces are located. It should be, and the balance of the spaces are to be located.
Which one is that?
It's the first new condition regarding the transitional park. It's just two words that are missing, and I believe staff agrees that those words are missing. Doesn't change the meaning, it clarifies the language. Other than that, we are good. Thank you.
Okay, just to be clear, Mr. Rosenzweig, before you sit down, the first change that you mentioned about the grass or the AstroTurf, where was that going to be?
Commissioner Grimes, that's the second new condition.
Okay, so if the location, the green space, what exactly are you suggesting that we add? Can you just read it to me so we can make sure we add it?
I would, the second bullet pointed new
Yes.
transitional park condition would have a comma after the words basketball court.
Yes.
With the language added, quote, with AstroTurf being an acceptable means of so doing. Or artificial turf, that's fine. With artificial turf being an acceptable means of so doing. And then Commissioner Grimes, in the first bullet point.
What's the last word he said? Of so doing, thank you.
Of so doing. And in the
Got it.
first bullet point, third line of that first bullet point, which begins, and the balance of the spaces are?
To be.
To be.
I got that part.
Okay, great.
Thank you. I just want to make sure we got this right. Okay, thank you very much. Are there any commissioners with questions or comments? I'm going to ask for questions and comments on the preliminary plan that you wish to offer at this time. President Sinai.
Thank you, Commissioner Grimes. I mean, since I was the one that had a zillion comments on the conditions of approval last time, I'm just going to simply say that my concerns have been addressed in this version. I'm not going to go through bullet point by bullet point. There were a number of them. I think they were all dealt with. And so I'm grateful to staff for really pushing this forward and for the applicant for putting these in. They're agreeing to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Other commissioners, questions, comments? I see none. Is there, I can't see Commissioner Sean Kramer if she has anything. Oh, she's shaking her head no. Sorry, don't mean to put you on the spot. Okay. Are there any, before we move to public comment, would someone like to make a motion? If not, I'll do it. Okay, I'm going to do it. I will move to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of a preliminary land development plan and execution of a developer's agreement for 231 and 251 St. Asaphs Road, 123 Bala Plaza, and 333 City Avenue, 2 Bala Plaza, Bala Kinwood, with the conditions of approval as reflected in the agenda as amended by the sheet presented by staff and the verbal amendments that were offered tonight by the applicant. Is there a second? Thank you, Commissioner McComb. Anything further from commissioners? Seeing none, is there any public comment on this matter? Seeing none, any public comment online? Yes.
We do have one individual.
Okay.
Bob Handler. I'm promoting him to trying. Yes, please turn on your camera.
Hi. My name is Bob Handler. I'm a resident at Sutton Terrace, and I will be right across the street from this property as it's developed. I have just a quick question for probably Jillian. She and I have talked about the size of the transitional park, and with the change that I think I heard tonight, it sounds as though the basketball court area is going to be increased. Is that going to be taken away from the green space of the transitional park?
That's for you. Thank you, sir. Is there any other public comment online?
There is none.
Okay, so let me correct myself before we take a vote.
I'm going to let Jillian respond to that.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jillian, do you want to respond? I'm sorry, I didn't.
Yes, so the transitional park will increase in size. If the basketball court is moved closer to the Lanveris extension, it will remain the same size as we've seen on the plans. If they maintain the existing location, the green space will increase and the overall size will be increased.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right. So I, in my zeal to do this the right way, I made a mistake in my motion. To be clear, this was a motion to recommend approval of the preliminary land development plan and not the developer's agreement at this time. So we will deal with that next. So if the record could reflect, so I don't have to say it all again and risk stepping over my tongue. Okay, are there other commissioner comments? Commissioner Bernheim.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Grimes. And I can understand why you linked them two together, because in reality they are linked together. And that's part of the difficulty I have. I ought to preface, and I'll make it very quick, the comment that there's great appreciation for the large amount of work a lot of people did, from the developers, from the staff, and a number of people on this board. And I know President Sinai has worked extraordinarily hard with others in order to bring this where it is today. The stumbling block that I've had from the beginning, that I still possess now, is that the length of time that this projects out, and that the inability for us to properly ourselves project out what will happen in time. The municipal planning code is a very lengthy ordinance statute, which has specific provisions as to how one goes through the planning process of setting forth and bringing forth, plans. I don't believe it extends beyond 5 years. This has gone from 30 to 20 to 15, and it then bypasses what is in that statute. And it is that factor alone for which I have difficulty. This should come forward in the various phases, and then be it that whatever board is sitting here in 5 years would have the opportunity to go through land development. It is that stumbling block that I cannot overcome to support this, but that shouldn't be diminish what I said before, and its appreciation of a lot of the hard work to get this where it is. But I will not be able to support either of the two motions. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Bernheim. Are there any other commissioners who would like to offer any comments? Okay, I will call the vote again. This is on the preliminary plan. All those in favor, please raise your hand signifying aye. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All those opposed? 2, I'm sorry, 4. So thank you. Any abstentions? So the motion carries by a vote of 10 to 4. Okay, we will now move on to the developers agreement, which is in our agenda packets beginning on page 18. Jillian, you feel free to make some additional comments about the developers agreement.
Yes. So I had previously explained the changes to rectify the secondary, or to remedy some of the concerns about the secondary phase 1 residential development. As we had mentioned, that is included in the second page of the packet. There have been changes to the language on force majeure. That is as it has been proposed and included in your briefing, and is acceptable to the applicant. The applicants also, since you last looked at this, included language for termination. The agreement now includes a termination clause. And building C1, which was previously discussed, has been added back into the agreement as a priority improvement. And those are the major changes. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Thank you. Does the applicant want to make any comments on the developers agreement?
Again, it's Phil Rosenzweig. So the answer is not really. It is acceptable as presented after much work and with staff and President Sinai and others. But I do want to just mention that this applicant is willing to work with the township and your skate park group to talk about whether it is feasible to locate a skate park on our property as part of our amenities package. There are multiple places within our large site where a skate park could fit, and although I don't think it necessarily fits as a condition, I just spoke to my client, and we are open to that possibility as a solution to the problem, and we can talk about that, how that would fit in and where it would fit in, although not part of the transitional park, because the transitional park, if all goes well for us, will be torn up when the office buildings are built. So, thanks.
Okay, don't go away in case, don't go far anyway, in case anyone has questions or comments. Are there any commissioners who have any questions or comments? President Sinai, we'll start with you again.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Grimes. So I'm going to try and synopsize this as best as I can, because I've spent a lot of time working with my fellow commissioners and the applicant on this. And I support this, and I want to explain why. And we've already voted in committee, at least, for the plan, which I think everyone thinks is a great plan. And this is what is the contract between the township and the developer to give more than the 5 years or so that of rights to do that would ordinarily happen. In short, the way I think about this is I compare what this plan looks like to what is by right, which is a bunch of apartments and no green space, really. That's what the zoning is here. And do we get anything that looks like the picture on the screen if we agree to this, right? Because that is the question. And at this point, there's much work on the document. I think the answer is yes. Okay, and I divide this into sort of 3 stages in my head. The first stage I'm going to call phase 0, because it really is phase 0. And it's the stuff in the lower left, which is like the green, the blue triangle in the corner, and like the retail between it and the red arc, right? And either a office building or a hotel. Right? Phase 1 comes after phase 0, has a bunch more stuff which may include office buildings, may include residential. In order for them to get to phase 2, would have to include an office building, but if anything is built, it comes along with more parks and more amenities. Okay, that's what happens in phase 1. Phase 2 is like the cherry on top. Like if you deliver a bunch of really meaningful stuff for the township, then you get some additional residential development. That's how this thing breaks out. First chunk is 8 years, and there's 7 more years, and there's 5. Okay? So it's really a 15-year commitment by the township. In order to get to the back 7 years of it, they have to deliver in the first 8. What do they have to deliver? They have to deliver a bunch of retail, and they have to deliver a hotel or an office. And what we've worked through is deliver means actually building the thing, not filing a plan. Okay? That's what they have to get to the trigger in the next stage. Okay? Is that better than what we would get with just regular zoning? Yeah, because there's a bunch of retail that they don't have to do. That is really key to like getting this area to tick over economically. And there's a park that's there in replacement for the good public gathering space on this plan. There's a park that if they never get to that phase of the plan, they got to keep, and they got to keep in perpetuity. That is there to replace that public gathering space. And the reason that Jillian had them move it, through the parking is so it would function as a vibrant public gathering space in this agglomeration. Right? And I gotta say, like something I'm gonna keep repeating for this board, like it matters where the development goes. Right? It's not hey, if we put something here and something like, 5 blocks over here and, some other stuff over by that train station that it works just because there's enough of it. No, it has to be together. It has to be how people walk between. It has to be how they economically interact. It has to be not just apartment monoculture, because in order to get the retail to be vibrant, we need stuff with offices during the day, where people are at work during the day, at least hopefully can be back to work during the day, and apartments at night, right? And so you got to put the retail in the right place. And so this delivers something that we are lacking here, which is a retail street in the area of this agglomeration, in between where the existing offices are and where the new apartments are going. And it's the kind of thing that we need to tick over. And everyone on this board knows that I am not like a big fan for development's sake, but I am a fan when it works to make something that is not quite running well yet to actually run, okay? And so what's the second part? So the part that makes it economically feasible for them right now, it's got 174 apartment units in that first phase, which I used to think was a lot of apartments, right? And now we're doing more, but 174. The second phase has another 400 apartments in it. And they could just take those rights to do those 400 apartments and stop. But if they build those apartments, they have to include other parts that they would not otherwise have to do under our zoning, okay? Including the thing that looks like the thing in Swarthmore. I forget what the name of it is, the amphitheater. Okay, so that's a good trade. If they don't do that, the agreement gets torn up. The township has the right to tear up the agreement, right? We don't have to do it anymore. It's not like they get to hold both, okay? So that's how I see it. So what's our exposure? Our exposure is we're going to guarantee them 400 units, apartments for another 7 years. Okay? Relative to our current zoning, which probably allows them something like 1,500 apartments on the site anyway. So the alternative would be that we'd have to like hurry up, downzone this. They'd file a placement plan. They'd drag it out for like 7 years. Like we've used up most of the clock already. Like I don't think this is an onerous give on the part of the township, but that's how I see it. Okay? And then in order for them to get to the last 190 apartment units that are in the out 5 years, it requires building at least an office building in all the amenities, even if they don't build buildings to go along with them. Right? So it's not the deal that gets all the amenities now and all the buildings later. It's not the deal that guarantees an office building, because at the end of the normal MPC window, that might not be there and it might just go away. This whole agreement goes away, but it's a normal MPC window. At least we got a better park out of it. Right? So look, it's not the deal I first advocated for. It's still a deal I support, okay? And it's a deal that I think is important for this area in the township, because we are trying to take a declining office sector and make it better. And I don't think we should make it better just by throwing a bunch of development at it. What we do should be surgical and smart. And this gets the closest to that of anything I've seen. And so that's why I support it. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner McComb.
Thank you, Commissioner Grimes. I'm going to take your word, which is that you didn't want us to repeat the comments and questions we had at the last time. We've seen this development many times, so I'm not going to repeat myself. At the last hearing, though, I asked the question, what do we get in exchange for this 20-year window? And I think President Sinai just articulated exactly what we're getting. We're getting an opportunity to elevate the space, to get vibrant public gathering space, and to take a place that's kind of empty, kind of not much going on, empty, sterile, and we have, parks and gathering spaces. And I think the applicants just made the suggestion that possibly a skate park, which is, exactly what we need in the township. We need places for recreation, something, other than apartments. So we're elevating the area. So I would commend the applicant, in particular Janet Giuliani, who has worked tirelessly on this and is committed to making this a project we can all be proud of. And in particular, President Sinai, who has spent an enormous amount of time sort of figuring out the issues, and as we all just heard, he knows the issues backwards and forwards, and I think as a board, we've delegated to him the heavy lift, and he's done a tremendous job. So I support it, and thank everybody for their hard work on it. Thank you.
Thank you. And Commissioner McComb, since you're the word commissioner, if you want to repeat yourself for 30 seconds, you're welcome to do that.
Nope, there's no need. Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, sure. Any other commissioner questions, comments? So, seeing none, I actually have one, and Mr. Rosenzweig, oh, you're still there?
I am.
So I had raised a point which I'm going to ask you to just to publicly answer. At the issues briefing that commissioners get said in their, and I believe you talked about this also 2 weeks ago, that even if Tishman Speyer were to assign parts of this agreement, parts of the project to other developers or sell it, that Tishman Speyer would remain the master developer. And I hope, by the way, I don't want to put you, is that an accurate characterization of that? Because my ultimate question is going to be, just so you know, is there anywhere in the developer's agreement that says that?
Okay, so Commissioner Grimes, the applicant, the developer, right, in this agreement can assign the entirety of it to another Tishman-Speyer-like entity, okay? And that could theoretically happen. But the preface of your question about the parts of this, because I think the real concern is, do you have different parties who need to be accountable, can't happen because the property is not subdividable, right? It is not subdividable, and by the way, if it were, it would have to come before you on a subdivision. Let me just finish the thought if I could.
Okay. Except you're not answering the question I asked.
But I think I'll get there, right?
Okay.
The individual buildings are all part of the master plan controlled by the developer, right? And the only mechanisms we would have to bring in other interested parties, financially interested parties, would be by a joint venture, in which case we are still in it, right? We could have a private agreement with a hotel operator, for example, because we don't operate hotels. We would bring in a hotel company to joint venture it with us, wouldn't change the ownership of the site, and wouldn't change the developer's responsibility to Lower Merion Township under the agreement. We could ground lease the hotel site, for example, to a hotel operator. We are still the owner of the property. We are still responsible under the developer's agreement. We don't get relieved of any responsibility thereunder. So no matter what the mechanism is, the developer in this developer's agreement absolutely serves as a master developer, but the term is not used in the agreement.
So let me ask my question a different way, because I'm really not clear on your answer to whether it's your answer. On page 42 of the agreement, and it's subsection I of section 36I, there's an assignment clause.
I'm going to try to get the...
Well, this hasn't changed. This clause is still the same clause. And I take your time, but I assume you're familiar with it, because this is important for me and possibly others. This clause says the developer has the right to assign its rights and obligations to another party with no written notice to the township, which party becomes title owner of all or any portion of the property. Is that a wrong statement is that not what is intended for this agreement? Because that sentence and the rest of this provision says that Tishman-Speyer could leave this project. Regardless of whether you think they will, we're dealing with a legal document.
Yeah, no, it's a good question, Commissioner Grimes, and I'm looking at it, which is why I wanted to have it in front of me. And the answer is the exact same. You couldn't become a title owner of any or all a portion of 1 or 3 Bala to a portion of it. You couldn't become that. Right? Legally, there's no way for us to convey a legal interest in fee simple of a portion of 1 or 3 Bala to a third party.
Okay, but that's not in this agreement, correct? And I'm not going to berate you, I'm just going to move on in a moment, but I'm asking you specifically, is there anything in this agreement that says that Tishman-Speyer will remain the master developer?
Okay, so there's no, the term
That's a very specific question.
The term master developer is not used in this agreement.
Okay, fine.
Okay,
thank you.
But I would suggest to you that developer equates to master developer in the manner in which you're reading it.
Thank you. Okay, that ends my question. Thank you. So, and just to sort of, I'm going to make some comments. So this is a different, my concern is very different. Thank you. I was the last commissioner with questions or comments. So my concern is very different from what President Sinai and Commissioner McComb said, and I'd like to just explain where I am on this. Because I just raised a point that's very difficult and disappointing for me on this. I supported the preliminary plan a few moments ago. I voted for it. And I support what is in this preliminary plan. I hope that this project, I share what Commissioner McComb and President Sinai said. And I hope, I hope this project happens in the orderly fashion and with the components that we're talking about. The challenge for me, which I cannot, which is a major issue for me and possibly others, is that I believe we're doing this agreement because we have a trusted and valued partner in Tishman Speyer. That's how it was presented to us. They have a great record. They've been here for years. We hope they'll be here for a long time. I don't know that anyone has substantive issues with Tishman Speyer and the way they execute their developments. They're a great developer. The problem is, for me, we don't know that they're going to be here in a week. They probably will be, or even forget about 5 or 10 years. They have the right to assign under this contract, regardless of all of the explanation, under the contract, which is what we deal with, they have the right to assign all or any part of this development to another entity. And in which case, all of the obligations, rights and obligations to either the portion they assign or sell or the whole project go to that other entity. And under the language of this contract, we might not be dealing with Tishman Speyer. And the challenge there is that not every developer has the same reputation, the same ease to work with, and quite frankly, there are some developers of residential and commercial who have less of a reputation and might be difficult to deal with. Further to that, if parts of this parcel of this project are assigned to different developers because different parts of this project are sold, we could end up dealing with 5 different developers, some who are reputable, some who might be less than reputable, and I see that as a real challenge, if not, frankly, a nightmare for our building and planning staff to be sort of herding cats, so to speak, and getting each developer participating at that time who wasn't party to putting all this together to comply with their obligations. And for me, because fundamentally, I don't believe that we would be doing this if we weren't partnering with the current owner of this parcel. If we're doing this because of Tishman Speyer, in my opinion, if there's a possibility that they may not be in this project, it causes great concern and pause for me. Just to sum it up, and because of that, and because of the subsequent headache it could be for our staff, and because of the lesser development I think that we might end up getting out of this, I am not willing to support it on that basis. And let me just say, it's with regret, because again, I did support the preliminary plan and I support all the goals that were stated, but the possibility of having other parties with less repute is a deal breaker for me. So anyway, are there any other commissioners who wish to comment? Commissioner Bernard.
Commissioner Grimes, and there are some other better real estate lawyers than myself that are here. I don't think that we would have the right to preclude the alienation or the sale of that property in any land development, that we couldn't do that. If they wanted to go forward and transfer it, that they would have the right to do it, and I don't think that we could bind them. Thus, one of the reasons, say, you come back in that periodic time, who is it that's coming back? And all of the, without going through it or reading it, albeit it's in front of me right here on my screen, all of the rights that the municipal planning code provide us as a body approving a plan, each and everything that we say that we've accomplished, and all the work that has been put in for what has been projected out there, we would have that shot each and every time. And if they're going to do the project that they claim, and I take them at their face value, then the amenities we're talking about getting, they're going to do that to attract the people. We all know what the difficulties are, be it with office buildings or hotels. No one's building any of those today, and what they're going to do, down the line will be what the market will dictate, and that's the time that we ought to be making the decisions of what other, amenities and use of open space, ought to be put into the project. And your concern is, we don't know who we're going to be dealing with, is a legitimate concern, but not one that we could bind them to say, you must do this, you must stay in control. Who knows what happens to them anyway. But your concern of the future is consistent with the concern that I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me just retort, because you responded to my comments.
Hey.
In a contract, this is not a preliminary plan developers agreement. They can agree or disagree to anything. The right to assign, we originally asked for a right to consent to any assignment, and that was not acceptable, and I respect that they didn't want to accept that. But it is possible in a developers agreement to agree to that, and again, to me, it changes the equation. So, right. Is there any other, but thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else? Okay, seeing none, is there any public comment about the developers agreement? Anyone online? No. Okay, so we will call the vote. All those in favor, please.
Don't we need to make a motion?
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot, we don't have a motion. Please.
I have a call for it.
So you've asked me to make the motion, so I'll make a motion.
I assumed you might want to make one.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, so I will move that we recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of, execution of a developer's agreement at the applicant's request to allow a 20-year phase master redevelopment plan for the properties at 231, 251 St. Asaphs Road, 1 and 3 Bala Plaza, and 333 East City Avenue, 2 Bala Plaza. And I think that is all in here. That's the only part that you haven't read, right?
Yeah, may I suggest that you amend your motion with the changes that were recommended by staff?
The developer's agreement as amended by the changes that were presented by staff and that were agreeable to the applicant. Thank you very much.
Is there a second?
I need a second.
Commissioner McComb, thank you. Anything further? Okay, we'll call the vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand signifying aye. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4. The motion carries 10 to 4. Thank you. President Sinai, that concludes the business of building and planning.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Grimes. So with that, we resume our Board of Commissioners meeting for this evening. And we have one item on the Building and Planning Committee, which is a Bala Plaza item. And I guess we vote again. So I guess I will move that we approve a preliminary land development plan. I'm going to do this as one item. A preliminary land development plan and execution of a developer's agreement at the applicant's request to allow a 20-year phase master redevelopment plan for the properties at 231 and 251 St. Asaphs Road, 1 and 3 Bala Plaza, and 333 East City Avenue, 2 Bala Plaza. The plan dated August 9th, 2021, last revised October 15th, 2021. Prepared by Apex Design Engineering Group, shows the phased redevelopment of the two sites. The plan includes the construction of 13 new structures at 231, 251 St. Asaphs Road, which include 5 mixed-use buildings containing a total of 497 residential units above the first floor, retail uses and structured parking, 3 office buildings above structured parking with first floor retail and the ground floor garage level, 2 commercial retail buildings, 1 single-use residential building containing a total of 70 units, 1 hotel building, and the structured parking deck. The plan also includes the construction of 2 new mixed-use buildings on and above the upper plaza level of the existing parking structure at 333 East City Avenue to contain 190 residential units. And the following conditions shall be complied with on an amended preliminary final plan, and that includes the amendments to the conditions of approval and to the developer's agreement that we discussed earlier. Do I have a second? Thank you, Commissioner McComb.
I have a point of order.
Yes, thank you.
And I'd like to be able to ask our solicitor, it is my understanding under the municipal planning code, once a tentative plan or a preliminary plan goes through, there then has to be a period of time from when it goes committee to the board. We've now added new conditions that haven't been advertised out there to the community and are going from the committee to the board instead of, I think it's like within 60 days, within 60 seconds. Is there something that I am misinterpreting under the code that permits us to do that this evening?
No, well, the board has passed a motion to approve a preliminary plan with conditions.
Right, but there were new ones that were added here this evening that had not been presented or advertised and were going right from committee to the board. I thought that we had to advertise after you go to the committee before you go to the board of what you've approved. There's no advertisement of this.
So just to be clear, we have amended conditions, but we don't have any additional conditions. That's what you mean, the amended conditions?
Call them what you want.
Okay.
Yeah, you're not amending the agenda. You're amending the item that is on the agenda. If you were adding something to the agenda, then you would have to have a motion to change the agenda, right, to add something. But what you've done is to simply amend a matter which is before the board, and that is the approval of a preliminary plan subject to conditions. So you've amended those conditions. That doesn't require advertisement. It doesn't require public notice. What it requires is that it be done at a public meeting, and that's what has been done.
Right, so the changes to conditions as presented here to us for the first time this evening, which have some additions and some changes, albeit they're related to existing conditions, that would not be considered something new and added to this sufficient enough to require additional advertisement?
No.
Right. All right, we'll take your word for it.
So if
Thank
I
you.
may follow up, I was incorrect in what I just said to Commissioner Bernheim. There actually are 2 new conditions in here. Does that change your answer at all?
No, I mean, we many times have added conditions to preliminary plans in approving them, and that is not a problem.
Okay, and we don't need a waiting period between when we do that in committee and send it on to Board of Commissioners for approval?
No, it does require, of course, that the applicant accept those conditions, right? But it doesn't require any delay in action on the part of this board.
Okay, thank you. Before we move ahead with this, which the motion has been seconded, I was going to ask if anyone wants to make an amendment to separate these into 2. Okay, Vice President Capt.
I'd like to make an amendment to separate. I voted in committee what may seem inconsistent, voting no on the plan and yes on the developers agreement. I did that because I do not think the plan is appropriate. I think the number of residential units is skewed. I think this is especially, what we heard in the past weeks about this being such a wonderful office developer. This plan didn't make sense to me. Given that we approved the plan or recommended approval of the plan, I thought the development agreement made sense and gives us a better future with the site. So combined, I cannot vote for them together, but if they're separated, I'd be thrilled.
Fair enough. Take your point, and so I'm going to amend my motion to consider for recommendation to the board. Approve a preliminary land development plan for the properties at 231, 251 St. Asaphs Road, 1 and 3 Bala Plaza, and 333 City Avenue, and with the plan language that I said earlier in my motion. Thank you, Commissioner McComb, for that second. Any commissioner comments, discussion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Just for the plan. Okay, opposed? Okay. Abstentions? Do you need that again, Jody?
Was that 11 to 3?
That was 11 to 3. Yep.
What changed?
Okay, yeah, someone switched, okay. Okay, so that one passes. So now we're on to the developers agreement. And so I will move that we execute a developers agreement at the applicant's request for the 20-year phased master redevelopment plan for these properties. As I've stated before, when I did this before, do I have a second? Okay, thank you, Commissioner McComb. Any commissioner comments, discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, opposed? Abstentions? Okay. So that passes as well.
What's the vote?
That was 11 to 3, right?
11 to 3.
Yep. Vote passed 11 to 3. Different 11 to 3. Okay, so that takes us through those items on our agenda. So any unfinished business to come before the board? Did I miss something? Yeah. Okay. I had a look. I'm like waiting for a point of order. Okay. Okay. Any new business to come before the board?
Yes. or I'm not sure if this is new business or announcement.
You know what? There's nothing between new business and adjournment, so why don't you go now?
Fair enough. So some people may be aware that SEPTA is contemplating making some changes to bus routes, including those which are in Lower Merion. And there is a plan for there to be a public meeting here in this boardroom on November 15th from 5:30 to 7:30, where SEPTA will, among other things, outline some of the considerations they have for changing bus routes, which will impact both Gladwin and Narberth and some of the bus routes in other aspects of the township. Now is not the time for us to get into those details, but we think it very important for the public to come out here, and we will do our best to circulate information as to what the plans are that SEPTA has. Some of my colleagues on the board, we have been involved in this for quite some time. We have some strong questions to ask as to what this plan is and its impact, which is significant upon our community. But mark your calendars, November 15th, 5:30 to be here, because you're going to want to ask questions and have your opinions heard by SEPTA. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Bernheim. Anyone else? Okay, that adjourns the Board of Commissioners meeting for this evening.